Do you have all the things they say should make you happy, but you still feel unfulfilled? Are you always doing what you should do? Or do you never feel like you're enough? And you want to feel better, more fulfilled, more aligned, and more comfortable in your own body? Then this is the show. Scared as fuck and doing it anyway, showing up authentically. My name is Paula Schuster, and I'm a self-love and authenticity coach. My life completely changed when I started loving myself again, putting myself first, and being true to me. This is the show that's going to help you get out of being stuck, out of the cycles of self-abandonment, and help you choose yourself without feeling selfish. It will give you not only inspiration, but awareness, courage, and insights to make changes and live your life for you. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Scared as Fuck and Doing It Anyway, Showing Up Authentically podcast. I'm your host, Paula Schuster, and my heart is so happy to have Kenne-Anne with me on the podcast today. Before I get into introducing her, I am a life and business coach, and I want to take a minute to share some of my journey with you in case these are things like you're feeling you could use help with in your life. I have literally completely changed my life in the last 3 years, and I would love to work with you as your coach if you're feeling unfulfilled, and if you're feeling like you know you're meant for more than what you currently have going on in your life right now. And if you're just feeling like you want to make changes in life. So here are just a few of the things that I've changed for myself. I went from feeling shackled in the chains of my corporate job to being a successful entrepreneur and making my own schedule. And just as a sidebar, it's totally reset my nervous system and put me in a much healthier physical and mental state. I went from self-loathing to loving myself and all the pieces and parts of me. I went from feeling completely broken and like I would never be able to pick up all the pieces to feeling whole just as I am. I went from hating most of my life to being grateful, so grateful for my life that I can't wait to wake up for it every day. And I went from feeling completely alone and like everything was on my shoulders alone to knowing that I have a team of guides helping me and the universe helping me, and that life is happening for me and through me and not to me. And I made these changes by choosing myself. I started to choose myself. I got committed and stayed devoted to myself. I started meditating. I hired myself a coach. I started looking in the mirror every day and telling myself that I love myself. And let me tell you, that was not easy at first. I changed my perspective from nothing is possible to everything is possible for me. I stopped doing what I thought I should do and started doing what I want to do. And I did so much more, but these are some of the things. You get the idea. So if you're ready to make some changes in your life, check out my coaching packages, look at my About Me page, book a free discovery call so we can meet and see if we're a good match for working together. Some of the best investments I've made in my life ever have been on coaching. You can find everything at ReikiFlowMN.com. And just remember, you have all the answers you need within you. You just might need someone to help you draw them out of you. Okay, so back to introducing Kenne-Anne. I say it a lot throughout the episode, but I just love and appreciate this woman so much. She's such a bright light, and she just oozes sweetness and authenticity and self-worth and generosity and caring and nurturing and joy from the inside out. Our conversation makes me feel so nourished, and even just her voice makes me feel nourished, and I hope it makes you feel the same. We have such an amazing, deep, connected, true, and real conversation in this episode. And, it just resonates as true throughout my whole being. And I just received so much from it, and I know you will too. She truly is a gift and just a complete joy to know and be with. So without further ado, please welcome Kenne-Anne Jan. Welcome, Kenne-Anne. I'm so excited to have you on, dear friend. I just love you, and I'm so glad you're here with me today.
Thank you, Paula, my darling. I am honored to be here. And yes, I was very much looking forward to this time together. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Congratulations on your podcast. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you. And same to you, dear friend.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
Um, why don't, I maybe just start off by telling us a little bit about, who you are, Kenne-Anne, briefly, and who you are.
Who is Kenne-Anne? Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, first my name. I tend to explain my name throughout my life. I've had it for 50 years. And I was named after my dad. My dad was Kenneth. They called him Ken. And he wanted only girl children. So I have one sister. He has two daughters. And he wanted me to be named Ken. I'm the firstborn. And my mom said, absolutely not. I'm not naming my girl child Ken. So I went for 3 months being referred to as the baby. And, the baby's hungry, the baby's crying, where's the baby, and so on. And in Trinidad, at least back in 70s, and even when I was growing up, Sunday family lunch was a big deal, and it was extended family. So the story goes that after Sunday family lunch at my parents' home, or the aunts and uncles, the dining room table would be cleared, and everyone will get their pens and papers out to come up. Okay, what is the baby's name? They have meetings.
I love it.
What are we naming the baby? And of course, my dad turned every suggestion down. And my mom says one day he just called her and he said, okay, this is what we're calling the baby, Kenne-Anne. So it looks like Kene-Anne, but it's pronounced Kenne-Anne. So I just start with that. I grew up in Trinidad and currently happily married and we live in Canada. And I feel as if I've really come a long way in life through the struggle, I want to say the struggles, but the dark times.
Yeah.
As I think every one of us has had dark times and certainly will continue to have dark times. And as I'm saying that, I'm thinking of Steve Harvey, who I absolutely love and certainly hope to meet in person one day. I love his vision and his insight. And I'm quite sure it's he that said, when you feel things are dark, consider yourself being buried, just like a seed is buried.
Yeah.
Allow that darkness to nourish you like the soil nourishes the seed in the darkness for it to germinate and grow. Isn't that beautiful? That just popped into my head.
It is totally beautiful. And I mean, what a that's exactly right. But it's so hard to do in the moment, isn't it? When you are going through the dark times,
oh,
it's so hard to have that awareness and be present with it and feel through it, especially um well, how we grew up and societal things and that, right? Like it's because so many of us really aren't used to feeling our feelings.
exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
And so my growing up in Trinidad, my story of life, I guess, at a young age, my dad was diagnosed with brain cancer, but it did not happen in how we hear things happening today, where somebody goes to the doctor and they get told. My dad did not like to go to the doctor. He only went to the doctor when he was actually sick, and he took pride in always asking for the injection. If a medication came, give me the injection, because his theory was it works immediately. Whereas even now, I have a terrible fear of needles. So I know I didn't get that from him. So he had a lot of symptoms before, and being in the 80s, not wanting to go to the doctor, he actually started to walk with a tilt. Like he would be walking. And now I think of it, I forget which side he was tilted to, but his whole body, he looked like a leaning pole walking down,
Wow.
street or whatever, or around the house and so. And I remember as a child, I felt embarrassed. I'm embarrassed to say that I felt a bit of shame
Mhm.
And what was wrong with my dad? Nobody knew, nobody said anything. But just and I forget if I was 11 or 12 or 13. He eventually passed away when I was 14, but that was after having brain surgery and so on. But it really came to head one Saturday night where he and my mum were looking at TV in their bedroom, and he was sitting on the edge of the bed doing whatever, getting into bed or out of bed. And I was in the living room looking at a movie, and I just heard thump, like a huge, not just a thump, like a boop, boop, like a sound. And it was my dad collapsed. And this was in the Caribbean. You do not, at least when I was growing up, you do not call people like 9 o'clock at night, lights are out kind of thing. You might be looking at TV, but everybody's down for the night. So I ran into my parents' bedroom. My dad was bleeding from at least one ear. I don't remember if both of his ears, as we say in Trinidad, but definitely one ear, blood was coming out. And I remember thinking that, and he couldn't talk. So he got rushed. Anyway, long and short, MRI determined he had a tumor and it looked malignant. So he had brain surgery and so on, fast forward. And the whole thing is that back in those days, nobody talked about mental health. Nobody talked about, I don't know, about how, and I guess we didn't know, the adults in our world back then didn't know. There was not the awareness.
Right.
So I really felt isolated, not consciously. It certainly was not a conscious thought. This is me looking back at
Right.
myself. And I think so many people, I would like to think a lot of people can relate, because I'm realizing now in my life, we are never alone in any situation.
Yeah.
The exact circumstances may be different, but we are not alone in going through what we're feeling. And it was very lonely. And it was only as an adult that I looked back and I thought, oh my goodness, I spent all of my teens and I would say my early 20s in depression. And there was it wasn't, you could go to a doctor and talk, like I didn't know anybody else that was depressed. There was no social media like there is now that you could learn about things, and we have the resources
Right.
and certainly the conversations. But where was I heading with this? Oh, just feeling alone, because I looked around, and as a 14-year-old, I know with my whole heart that everybody in my life in that era truly, truly felt for my mom, my sister, and me. I know their hearts went out to us.
Yeah.
And I know we had a village. I know I had uncles and family friends who are uncle, we call everyone auntie and uncle in Trinidad as out of respect, whether they're blood related or not.
Right.
No, I was raised by a village, but the 14-year-old girl in me longed for her daddy, longed for her dad. And um, what was my point? I was going to say something with this about feel it right. So when I looked around, nobody else, all of my friends had both parents, or their parents were divorced, but they had their parents.
Right.
All of my friends, traveled and had, just life easygoing, or at least it seemed from my perspective of, we all know the backstage view of our lives. And sadly, unless we talk about it and unless we let other people in, no one else sees the backstage of our life.
Mm-hmm.
And I use the term backstage because I was in the drama club. My mom often told me growing up, you missed your calling. You belong in Broadway because you're so dramatic. And being in the drama club, I was on stage, my claim to fame was Captain Hook in the big production of Peter Pan in high school. And the audience never saw backstage.
Yeah.
And backstage was chaos. When I say chaos, organized chaos.
Mhm.
You know, the colors that wouldn't come out, and the makeup that ran, or the costume that didn't fit properly. But all the audience saw on stage was the way things were meant to go. And how did I even end up here, Paula? Talking about
Wow.
stage.
I've
Uh-huh.
never heard it described that way, but I mean, I really feel like that's how it was for me too, right? In certain ways, because, you know, the way I grew up, it was always as long as you looked good on the outside, then it didn't matter what was going on in the inside, right? Because it mattered what everybody else thought, and you always had to look good and all that. And so I really resonate with how you with that analogy. Um, yeah.
Yeah. And I grew up because I felt so isolated. And again, as I said, it wasn't conscious. It wasn't me walking around, oh, I feel isolated. But I felt alone. And I did not know, and I had no tools how to process what I was going through as a 14-year-old, even a 12 and 13-year-old, because in Trinidad, we say mommy and daddy. I know nowadays people say mom and dad, but I grew up mommy and daddy from the British influence. And I just say that because I know North Americans say mom and dad, and at
Yeah.
50 years old, referring to your dad as daddy might sound strange. But we didn't have the tools back then. And I'm grateful now. I'm so grateful now that it's more accepted for us to talk about things.
Yeah. Me too.
Yes. And it really helps ease that weight on our shoulders, because it's so easy. And I talk about this a lot on my podcast. It's so easy to think that we're alone
Absolutely.
when everybody else is going through something as well. And
Mhm.
everybody thinks they're alone. And we can so help each other
Yes.
carry that weight. Isn't that just beneficial to all of us?
Oh my gosh, yes. That is one of the reasons why I'm doing my podcast, right? Because it not only helps me to talk about it, and it's healing just talking about all the things, whether it's, from when I was younger or when it's currently. But it also helps other people know that they're not alone, that it's okay for them to start opening up and talking too, because that's what helps us heal. It's what helps us grow and evolve and change and
Yeah.
go through all the things we need to get past it. So
Yes.
beautifully said, my sweet friend. So that all, really shaped you in ways, right? Having that experience, such a traumatic experience, early on in life. And so you said that you went through kind of a depression in in those early years.
Mhm.
And you and I have talked before, and I remember you saying, something like you don't really recall much of your 30s because you were just doing and getting by and putting masks on, which I'm sure so many people can relate to. And then I remember you saying, in your 40s, the switch went off and you didn't really care what people thought. And now in your 50s, you really feel like you're coming into your own and finding your own voice and worth. And so, um, you know, what has been your, kind of thinking about all of that,
Mhm.
have you always, what has been your authenticity journey? We're in the 30s of, you're putting on masks. I mean, that obviously isn't authentic, right?
Correct.
Um, and it's just, can you talk a little bit about your authenticity journey?
Yes, certainly. Thank you. And to be relatable, when I just backtracking a bit with putting on masks, and in my 30s, we had moved to Canada. My husband is Canadian. He was born and raised in Canada. He was living in the Caribbean when we met. So we moved up to Canada in 1999. And it was just the hustle and the bustle, go to work, come home, the changes of the season, you do this in winter, you do this in summer, just that rat race.
Yes.
And putting on the masks again was not a conscious thing, but it was, I have to be this person at work. So we don't realize that we're putting on the mask to show up to work and to be that professional person. And then we go to church and then, oh, you put on that mask and you show up as people expect you to be, because part of going through childhood trauma, I would think, I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist or a psychotherapist, my experience is that going through trauma of any kind, you become a certain level of a people pleaser.
Yes.
I was a huge people pleaser in that I felt nourished when people pointed out, Kenne-Anne is such a sweet person. Kenne-Anne is such a good person. Kenne-Anne, you're so helpful. Kenne-Anne, you're just always there. You step up all the time. The thing is, looking back, as much as my intention was good, I did want to be helpful. I did want to be kind. And kindness is something definitely I take pride in a good way. All these things were good qualities, but they were coming from a place of me looking for love, like to be loved outside of myself.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm feeling to burst out crying saying this, Paula. I was looking for my self-worth outside of myself.
Yes. Me too.
Yes. So the authenticity to me now, what it means, and I mean, different people may have different perspectives of what their authenticity means. Mine to me means I know my worth, not in a cocky, egotistical, selfish way, but I know that I'm worth loving.
Yeah.
No, and I love myself. I mean, I don't know when this episode is going to air, but in this first month of 2024, I am hoping to turn 51 years old. And I can honestly say it is in the last few years that I've come to know, and it's gradual. So it's not like you wake up one day and when I did turn 40, though, it was a switch that went off, the switch you referred to. It's like, screw everybody's opinion. I
That's
am,
right. That's right.
you don't like my hair like this, then don't look at me.
Yeah.
And no, and that sounds, can I swear?
Yes, you can. That's the name of the podcast.
Right. That sounds badass, but behind it was like, okay, screw everyone. And then I'm running for cover to make sure, okay, did anybody
Right.
rocks me?
At first, right? When you're kind of getting your feet underneath you with that new kind of like confidence and like, fuck it.
Yes.
Can totally relate.
Yes. And authenticity rarely comes, in my case, it has come gradually through healthy relationships. By all means, I mean, I have been blindsided in some cases in relationships where, relationships ending, and it's like, huh?
Right.
What happened? And a lot of grieving process, has had to go on and so. And just as Oprah Winfrey says, what I've come to know, what I know for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I know for sure is my self-worth. My worth is determined by me.
Yeah.
I know my self-worth.
Not negotiable with other people.
Not negotiable. And that's not to say there's not a struggle still from time to time, right? It's not, oh, I'm me, woe is, watch out world, here I come. Yeah, some days it's watch out world, here I come. And other days it's, oh, I need a friend to talk with. Or my husband, I need a soft landing.
Yeah. To help me recognize the truth about me, right?
Yeah.
like deeper relationships. I call them sisters.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, and that is a big part of it too, because the old version of me would think everything is permanent.
Yes.
Feeling when I'm feeling down, you can't even rationally think that this too shall pass. This is just part of it. And the same thing when you're happy, we think this is going to last forever. There are peaks and valleys. And you know what? Sometimes they're not always peaks. Sometimes they're just flat, flat land.
Mhm.
And that's part of being authentic. So what I have come to know is this too shall pass.
Yeah.
And to embrace. Sorry, we had a lot of snow last night and our snow blower is broken. And I don't know if you're hearing it, but our neighbor, I think, is blowing our driveway because I'm right on the other side of the wall. Anyway,
I can't hear.
I hope it, okay.
It's all good.
Okay, good. And I think that's part of being authentic is accepting ourselves in that when we look at the ocean, and just the waves coming, we'll take the gentle waves, not the surfing, big boulder crashing waves. But when we look at the ocean comes in, it ripples on the sand and it goes back out and it comes back in. And I think in my case, me coming to know that that is what life is has brought me to my authentic self. I don't know
Yeah,
if that makes any sense.
absolutely. And how, like for the listeners, how do you know, do that? How do you go through that acceptance? How, like, what can people do? So number one, it's a realization, right? It's that perspective that you gain, but then like, so many of us are so used to, pushing all of that down and not really feeling the feelings, not really feeling the valleys, the dark times. And so how can people do it? How did you do it?
Okay, so starting, like the key, as you're asking that, I was one of the early things that I started with consciously was tweaking my self-talk.
Ah,
And I say that because up to yesterday, I had a conversation with a close acquaintance. I'd say, an acquaintance who's borderline a friend. You chat a lot and the person is, oh, I'm such an idiot. And I'm like, if you're going to hang around me, you need to stop that right now.
I love it.
Stop calling yourself an idiot. You
Yep.
are valuable, you are smart. And so where do you go? So for these steps for the listeners, what I did. So it's very hard to go from a place of I'm stupid, I'm an idiot, I'm this, what's wrong with me? Because these are things we have heard told to us through many avenues in life, through many relationships.
And
So
practiced for a long time.
and practice from a long time. And we begin to believe it. So then we repeat it. It's hard to go from somebody saying they're an idiot to saying, oh, I'm a genius. There has to be that middle ground.
Yep.
And that is where the joy is. It's that journey of self-discovery. Because what can I replace being an idiot with? Oh, you know what? I spell something or I break something. It's like, oh my gosh, I am so hilarious. Look at, and when I learned to laugh at myself, I said this to Julia, our dear friend in common.
Oh,
She's like, Kenne-Anne, you've said this to me so many times. I forget, like 2 or 3 times. When I learned to laugh at myself, and I learned that through my marriage. I got married when I was 23. So that's to tell you, in my 20s is when I started to learn to laugh at myself. And that started to change, to improve. People don't like change. That started to improve my inner language to myself.
yeah.
And learning to laugh at yourself is a conscious decision of not taking yourself so seriously, even if it's starting with the statement, you know what, I feel I did something stupid. and that's okay. Those 3 words, and that's okay.
Oh, I love that.
Made a mistake, and that's okay.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think that's an excellent place for somebody to start just with 3 simple words, because what does that do? If we say, just for a moment, somebody just takes a moment and imagine something they did that really made them upset with themselves, to then be that voice to say, and that's okay. It's like saying, okay, it's not the end of the world. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, you know? And that's a good place to start. Another good place to add into that is, I remember saying to my friends, and I love you just as you are. Saying to my husband, I love you just as you are. Then I started to say it because I would love everybody else, But to
Yeah.
Kenne-Anne, don't you find you're hard
Yes.
on yourself when you're not aware? So to realize that we would never, unless we are horrible human beings, which I have come to realize we are 99.99999% good people in the world.
Yes.
We often would not talk to other people the way we start off talking to ourselves.
That's right.
Yeah. And so I started to look at myself in the mirror and saying, I love you just as you are.
I
And
love this. This is one of the things I did too.
yeah,
How was it the first time doing it when you did it for the first time?
to be honest, I
Yeah.
felt the biggest nincompoop on earth. I
Really?
felt so like ridiculous. I'm like, I love you just as you are. I couldn't even look at myself in my eyes in the mirror. I felt foolish. I felt, how candid camera is like, okay, this is going to be on America's Funniest Videos. But then it felt good the second or the third time. And the fourth time is, I love you just as you are. And then I
Oh,
would stand up and be, I, that English thing where you emphasize each word in a sentence.
yes.
So I did this for a while. And this is just me coming up with things.
Yep.
I love you just as you are. I love you just as you are. I love you just as you are. I love you just as you are.
Oh
I
my
love you
gosh.
just as you are. I love you just as you are. I love you just as you are.
Oh, I love that so much, Kenne-Anne, and it makes me love you even more, honey. It just does. I I'm gonna switch my little practice with that because for me, the first time I looked in the mirror to tell myself I love myself, I could barely do it. It's
Yeah.
not that I felt foolish. I hated myself in so many ways, and I had been so mean to myself for so long, and I had practiced being mean to myself for so long that I could barely get it out. I mean, just tears were streaming down my face, and I could barely say, I love you, Paula.
Right.
And now, I've practiced it for so long, I can do it, smiling wide and really, like loving myself. But I love this variation that you're talking about. And for the listeners out there, try this, people. I love it so much, and I think you're going to too. This variation where you're emphasizing different parts of the phrase.
Yes. And or the whole time you're looking at yourself in the eyes. And some days, you know what, the first day you might make it to I love you just as you are. And you're like, okay, I can't do anymore. And the next
Yeah,
day you come back. Be patient with yourself. And it might just take a while to just look at yourself in your eyes in the mirror and smile. You may not even have any words the first week,
right.
but getting used to looking at yourself. Because the thing is, what I have come to realize is the world does not know how we would like to be seen in it. And I'll explain that. The world does not know how we would like to be seen in the world. The world sees us as we are,
That's right.
right? And I say that because you know what? Have you ever looked at a photo? And my friends who hear this are going to know who I'm talking about, Dean and Catherine. We were out together. We were childhood friends from teenagehood. A few years ago, we were out together, the three of us. I live in Canada, Dean lives in Trinidad, Catherine lives in Florida, and we met in Florida. We went out for one night with friends, and we took all these photos, the three of us. All the pictures, I said, "Oh my gosh, I look retarded." Dean, another picture. "Oh, I look," and all the pictures, Catherine said, "I look gorgeous." Or like, and she's putting all these pictures up, and I'm like, "Catherine, take it down. Like, I look retarded." And Dean is like, "No, ridiculous, Catherine, you need to take it down." When you think of it, the world does not know that the little bit of gray hair coming out of the very, very front of my head, that I'm self-conscious about it. Nobody else is looking at that. But I zone into that, or that one eye is looking bigger than the other in the picture. That, or the collar on the shirt wasn't, nobody's looking at all of that. So that's where I mean, the world does not know how we would like to be seen in the world, in it. The world just sees us as we are.
Yeah.
The world wants us to be who we are, and the world needs us to be who we are. If we come back to the seed and the soil, and that, let that darkness nourish you, that seed doesn't care how the sun shows up. The seed needs the sun to show up for what it needs the nourishment for it to grow.
Yeah.
The seed doesn't care how the rain feels when it shows up. The seed just needs the rain to show up in all its wetness, and the sun to show up in all its sunniness. And
Amazing. My whole body just lit up with truth bumps. I call it goosebumps, truth bumps. Um,
yeah,
Beautiful.
so if anybody could take anything away from that, I mean, all these things just came to mind as we're talking. I
Yeah.
said, don't walk around saying sun show up in your, sunniness. But, when we dig down a bit deep to know, it's like driving a car. If somebody says, well, how do you drive? Having driven for a while, you have to stop and think. So us talking about how did we get onto the path of healing? Because to me, the journey ends the day we die.
Right.
It's not to say any of us is fully healed. We can, however, say, I'm doing better today than I was yesterday.
Yeah. And celebrate that, right?
Celebrate that. And
Mhm.
tomorrow we might fall a bit, what we think is a fall behind. But I heard this recently, and I'll end with this. I heard this beautiful analogy recently somewhere on Instagram. I love all these, self-thought, inner thought things. And the person said, I forget who it was, that before the arrow is shot out of the bow, like an arrow on a bow,
Mhm.
the arrow has to be pulled back tight.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that just came to mind to share. So I'm hoping that somebody listening today can resonate with that and know that you are loved just as you are, and you're okay where you are. So before that arrow could be shot out of the bow to reach to be launched to where it's meant, to its target, it has to be pulled back. And that pulling back is often uncomfortable and could be painful. But knowing in this time, what might seem like, oh, I thought I was doing so good, and now here I am right back. Okay, get ready to be launched, baby, because you're heading to your target.
That's right. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love it. And, I had seen that before too, and just, had forgotten it for a minute. And I wonder if that was Kathy Heller. Anyway,
Yeah, I forget who said it. I just know it came to mind, and I loved it when I saw it.
yeah, beautiful. So
Mhm.
many good words of wisdom here, Kenne-Anne, and gems that people can take with them. Oh,
No,
um, are
thank you.
there any other things that you would share with people? So you talked about, um, revamping your self-talk and telling yourself that you love yourself in the mirror, right?
Yeah.
And any other big ones that stand out to you that help you along your journey?
I think as you ask that, the big, big, big one was ironically the pandemic. And I'll explain what I mean. There was an old movie with Adam Sandler called Click, where he had a remote control. And when something wasn't going his way, he pressed pause and he got to, change things a bit. And then he'd press play again. And, whatever life situation would
Mm.
continue on in the way that he preferred it to. At least that's what I remember from it. I could be completely off course. I just remember him having the remote control pressing pause. And before the pandemic, I often, often, often used to say, I need a pause button on life. I need a pause button on life. I was exhausted and I did not know how to pause. I did not know how to slow down. I did not know, how to rest from this hamster wheel of life.
Yeah. I think a lot of people can relate to that one. I know I definitely can. I was there for years and years and didn't know how.
Yes, and it's a desperate desire to, and you just don't know how to.
Yeah.
So when the pandemic came and we got sent home from work, you're going home for 2 weeks, everybody come in and get a laptop and all excited, go home for 2 weeks. Oh, yippee.
Yeah.
As things got worse and worrisome, and by all means, it was a very scary time, but not having to be anywhere, not having to rush. I mean, the furthest I had to rush to be was at the dining room table to log into the computer for work. And it took a while for that to drain from my body, that anxiety of life.
Yep. And reset your nervous system a bit.
Yes, my
Mhm.
nervous system was on overdrive.
Yes.
And your question was, what else? And I'm trying to remember my thought of my point I was aiming to get right. So, my very, very, very dear friend, one of my very, very, very dear friends, Brenna, she has we have a little group of three. And, this year she said, okay, three, choose a word for the year. I'd started off with a word and then forgot about it. This year I sat with it. I said, stillness, because that is one of the things. Jay is my husband. My husband's name is Jay. And I've always said to him, honey, when you sit, after you cut the grass and you sit and you're looking at the grass, like, what do you do? Like, what are you thinking? He's like, nothing. I'm just admiring my work, cutting the grass. That was like talking a totally different language, like totally different language. Like, huh?
Right.
I did not know how to sit still. And even when I would sit next to him, say we're sitting on the front porch and I'm looking at lines in the grass that he took so much pride in, for example, it'd be like 10 seconds. I'm like, okay, I have to go change the laundry over.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know how to be still. And the blessing from the pandemic time, as much as I honor that there were horrendous experiences through the pandemic, what came to me was that inner stillness to learn. So that's my word for 2024 is stillness.
I love it.
To remind myself to sit. And again, the first day it might be 5 seconds. Be patient with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
The second day might be 3 seconds. The third day might be 6 seconds. The fourth day might be 1 second because then, somebody comes barging in the room. But learn to be still, because it is in that stillness that we can that we can be present. We can approach life being present. And that's what I would like to really focus, to hone in on, is that learning to be present comes from learning to be still, at least in my experience.
That is so amazing. And I love how the pandemic was sort of a permission slip, right? To start to help us get there because especially as women, we are sort of, well, I mean, maybe it's more, maybe I shouldn't just single women out. I mean, I know it's everybody because it's a societal thing, right? Like it's society that's like, go, 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 do, do, do. And I think so many of us can relate to that. But I think especially as women, it really affects us because we are, um, like whether it's the whole mom thing or, we're always just the caregivers, right? Like we're usually doing the laundry, we're usually doing the cook, not always, but like you said, you don't just sit there, you think about, oh, I sat there for a couple seconds and I got to go do the things that I, need to do. And so, um, I think that, at least from the people that I've talked to, that does sort of affect women a little bit more sometimes than men. That feeling of
Yeah.
always having to be doing something, because we're taught to care for everybody else in our lives, right, and everybody around us, and make sure everybody's okay, and all the things. Um,
Yes.
and I just love that because to just be,
Just be. Just
because
be.
that is part of what life is supposed to be like for us, right? It like we aren't here we don't come here to just be productive, and do all the
Produce,
things.
produce. Yeah. Yeah.
Life is supposed to be pleasant and joyful and blissful, and we
Yeah.
are supposed to, sit back and smell the roses. Is that how the saying goes or whatever? Literally, we're supposed to do that because look at how beautiful that rose in nature is. And that rose is never thinking, well, do I look okay? And is, you know,
Like smell
yeah,
okay. And I just laugh because as human beings, we know we have to shower to smell good, but a rose is just a rose. I'm not saying anybody to not shower. One thing you said, Paula, that is really powerful is how we as women in like society drives us without maybe even intending to, or maybe society intends us to be like that. And the thing with men, I've realized this with my husband. So I think men have it differently. So we are driven to look after, we are driven to care for,
yeah,
whereas I've realized in my own husband, and I think men, that they're driven to provide. And that's where their stress is.
yeah,
And I know, and I say this to honor men as well who are listening. For example, my husband, he works for himself, he's in the trades and so, and he has gotten a lot better, but with me encouraging him to give himself permission because he was working 7 days a week. When you have your own business, yes, you're out Monday to Friday working, and then on the weekends, he's writing up quotations, he's writing up invoices, he's checking emails. He gets home after work, we eat dinner and he's going through his phone to check text messages and voice messages from customers. And I've told that is not sustainable. But when he would take a Saturday and just take a nap, just fall asleep, just in his chair and just doze off. And when it first started, he'd wake up anxious. And I'd be like, honey, take a nap. Nothing like, so in other words, when we give ourselves permission
yeah,
or we give our love permission, and that's where that's okay comes into play. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I've slept in. I wanted to be up by a certain time to do whatever. I've slept in, and that's okay. Give your body what it needs. Give our mind what it needs. And that's where, yeah, anyway. I don't want to sound like I'm babbling because I could go on forever. I'm
you are
so
not.
passionate about it.
You are not babbling at all. I love everything you're saying, and I think
Yeah.
we're talking about this because this is something I need to hear right now because I just launched my podcast a few days ago, and I have been, the whole couple of weeks leading up to launch, and ever since it launched, like I'm working really long hours,
Yeah.
not just for the podcast, but because I'm also still doing Reiki and coaching and and I'm working, I'm burning the candle again at both ends like I used to in my corporate job. And I'm starting to feel exhausted, right? And then you get to the point, I can sort of almost see it coming. You get to the point where you just can't do it anymore, and then you start to feel depleted, and then that's when all of the negative self-talk starts to creep back in, and all of those things, right? So it's I'm so grateful that the conversation went here because I needed to hear that myself today. Thank you, dear friend.
Oh, I'm so grateful, my darling friend. Yes, and it's really about us giving ourselves permission. Because as you say, if I may offer you some words of
Yeah,
comfort with the
please.
podcast that you're trying to keep up, just two things. Remember, joy only stays in any aspect of our life while we allow it to stay. And when we get to the point of pushing and grinding and like we have this deadline and we make ourselves, joy has to leave. There's no place for joy there. Right. So I would just encourage you to give yourself permission to pace yourself. The other thing is give yourself permission to flow naturally. I launched on December 4th, 2023, because that date, I want to say celebrated, but marked 36 years that my dad passed away. So that was the significance of my launch date.
Mhm.
And I was going strong. And then Jay and I got the flu over Christmas and New Year's. COVID/the flu. And as much as I'd recorded a number of episodes, I was exhausted.
Yeah.
And I was beating myself up a bit because I'm thinking, I don't have an episode. I don't have an episode for this week. I don't. And then I said, you know what? Heck, I'll get an episode out when I get it. And it's going to be the best quality episode that I can do. In the meantime, I'm giving myself permission to get better from the flu. And
Thank
that's it.
you.
So if you can give yourself permission, yeah, it's new to you, and but allow yourself to enjoy the journey. So instead of maybe recording 5 episodes a week, go down to one, and then build yourself up, and record 2 1 week, and you know what I mean. Just
Yeah.
don't tie yourself to a rigid schedule. In other words,
Yeah.
and
Let
let it happen naturally. I'm not saying, oh, throw it all out the window. I'm just saying allow the ebbs and the flows. The ebb and the flow, go with it.
And the part about enjoying the journey is so important. So I just want to emphasize that. And I have to remind myself. In fact, I was reminding myself of that this morning when I was taking a shower because I woke up to an alarm instead of, waking up when I wanted to wake, when my body wanted to wake up, and I was still feeling tired. And I'm like, Paula, you gotta remember to enjoy the journey because I know all about going, doing, reaching the thing that I'm after. And then it's not all that it's cracked up to be because I didn't enjoy the whole process of getting there, which is where the magic is anyway, right?
Exactly, exactly. And as you say that, the image that came into my head is like going to what's a nice country place that you would like to be in, that you'd fly to, just off
Oh,
the top of your head.
Costa Rica.
Okay, so you get on a plane and you and your family, you jump on a plane, you go into Costa Rica, you're all excited, and then you're bickering because this one thing and this one spelled this, and you're bickering the whole way, and then you get there and it's like, okay, we're in Costa Rica, so now what? And that's what it is because the journey sucked. Because
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, that's what we allow ourselves to do, to give to ourselves. We allow ourselves to go through a journey of just being rushed and get it and unhappy doing it. And I'm not saying every time, by all means. I know that, but when to be present is to say, wait, step on the brakes. Tune in to Julia Christine's Our Daily Breath and
Yeah.
catch your breath.
I love that. I love her too.
Let's start again. Yes, and let's start again. And okay, where were we? Where do we want to be? Okay, everybody clean up the little mess, the little spills. I love you just as you are. Let's make this day great and beautiful. And that's how we catch ourselves in it. Yeah.
I love you so, so much. This has been the conversation of exactly what it needed to be. And I know that my listeners have also loved it. And I just thank you from deep down in my heart. Um,
Yes. Darling, I love you so much. And I'm so proud of you. And I do have to just sneak this in. Your photo with you and the sound, the what is that? You with the orange, the course that you did, the sound therapy, sound
oh
healing.
yes, at the gong.
Songs. Thank you. My mind went blank. That is such a gorgeous picture, Paula. It
Oh,
inspires me. I could feel the vibration of the gong when I look at that picture. It
oh,
is
thank you.
beautiful.
I love that you can feel the energy from that picture because that's I mean, it was such a magical moment.
Yes, yes, yes. So I love you too. And I thank you for the honor of being here on your podcast. And I'm so excited for what's to come for both
Yes.
of us.
Thank you so much. I am too. Um, and I just, again, you're just such an inspiration and I just love you. I don't know what else to say, but I love you.
And I love you too, darling. And we will be in touch.
Sounds
Mwah.
good. Thank you again. Tell me you don't love her. The sweetness just drips out of her like honey. I think she's just a beautiful soul, and I'm so glad to be connected with her on this earth right now. As I was listening back on this episode to prep it for release, I felt an even deeper connection with her, and she reminded me again to find the joy in the journey. So thank you again, my friend, my soul sister. Kenne-Anne's podcast is called Perspectives of Grief, and she talks about all kinds of grief, not just grief from the loss of loved ones in our life. So go check her out, follow her podcast, join her Facebook community, which is called Perspectives of Grief, and get to know her. She's just an amazing and authentic soul, and you'll just get nourishment from her, and you'll learn so much from listening to her. So follow her. Okay, here are the takeaways from our conversation. Number 1, when you feel things are dark, consider yourself being buried like a seed. Allow the darkness to nourish you like the soil nourishes the seed in the darkness for it to germinate and grow. Number 2, we are never alone in any situation. The exact circumstances of what we're going through may be a bit different, but we are never alone. 3, screw everybody's opinion. It only matters what you think. I love that one. 4, authenticity comes gradually through self-discovery, self-love, self-acceptance, and healthy relationships, including the one with yourself. 5, your self-worth is determined by you and is not negotiable. 6, nothing is permanent. There are peaks and valleys and flat land through life. This too shall pass. Number 7, authenticity is accepting ourselves. In order to start accepting yourself, first realize that you're not accepting yourself, then start by consciously tweaking your self-talk, learn to laugh at yourself, and incorporate the words, and that's okay. Like, I made a mistake, and that's okay. Number 8, look at yourself in the mirror and say to yourself, I love you just as you are. It might feel uncomfortable or ridiculous at first, but then it will feel good. Try emphasizing each word in the phrase and make it fun. 9, the world does not know how we would like to be seen in it. The world sees us as we are. The world wants us to be who we are, and the world needs us to be who we are. The seed doesn't care how the sun shows up. It just needs the sun to show up for what it needs, the nourishment for it to grow. Number 10, learning to be present comes from learning to be still. Press the pause button on life. Slow down and let yourself rest. Learn to sit and be still. Let yourself have a break and not have to be anywhere. Your nervous system will thank you for it. Number 11, allow the ebbs and flows in life and enjoy the journey. It's about more than the outcome. Okay, now for a little ad promo for Mud Water, the warm morning drink that I love. I get to say I drink shrooms for breakfast. Seriously though, I do. Mud Water is a coffee replacement drink made with mushrooms. that I switched over to a few years ago when I wanted to get away from coffee because I was kicking all of my addictions. I always thought I had low level anxiety, and it turns out it was just the coffee that I was drinking. I would especially always get nervous speaking in front of higher ups at my corporate job, and just generally speaking in front of groups of people. And when I kicked coffee and started drinking mud water, I gave a presentation to the leader, one down from the CEO at Wells Fargo, and I didn't have that nervous feeling that day because I wasn't drinking coffee. The Rise Cacao Blend tastes like cacao and chai had a baby. It's super yummy with a little oat milk and honey. It has 4 functional mushrooms: lion's mane, cordyceps, chaga, and reishi. It has cacao and chai for a hint of caffeine and chocolate-like flavor. The shrooms and turmeric are like the healthy benefits of it, and it has a bit of cinnamon for taste, but you can barely taste the cinnamon. It's certified organic, and with only a fraction of the caffeine as a cup of coffee, you get natural energy without the jitters or crash of coffee. And the cool thing is, Mudwater is hooking up my listeners with a special offer. If you go to mudwater.com/Paula Schuster, you can get started for $29, plus there's a $5 off discount for going through my link, which means that you get started for less than $1 a day. That's mudwtr.com/PaulaSchuster. And I'll put a link in the show notes too. It was so cool hanging out with you today, and I look forward to next week on the Scared as Fuck and Doing It Anyway podcast. Life is so freaking busy, and I'm truly grateful that you're spending some of your time here. I hope my podcast helps you and inspires you and fills you up and sheds new light on things and does something for you. And I hope this particular episode helps you allow the darkness to nourish you. And I hope it helps you find the joy in the journey. I would love to hear from you, and I would love to connect with you. That's one of the reasons why I started this podcast, is because I want to connect with more people. So reach out and tell me what you liked about this episode, or tell me what you didn't like, or don't give me any feedback on the podcast. Just reach out and let's connect and chat and talk. You can always reach me at paula@reikiflowmn.com. And remember to follow along on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening, because I have so many more incredible episodes coming up. And please download, follow, or subscribe. If you follow or subscribe, you'll be notified about new episodes when they're available, and it also helps other people find the podcast. Right now I'm still posting every week for sure on Thursdays, although podcasting does take up a super lot of my time, so I'm thinking about going to every other week. I'm not sure yet. And then here and there, I've been posting more than every week if I'm compelled to share a meditation or a sound bath or something like that. And if you're liking the podcast and benefiting from it, it would be so nice if you left me a review or a rating. You can do reviews on Apple and ratings in Spotify, and those things also help people find us. So it would be super nice if you gave us that gift. And if you know of anyone who would like this episode or benefit from it, please share it with them. Send them a text, send them a link, send them a DM in social, whatever feels best to you. But it would be super cool if you shared it with someone. And remember that you're always welcome to email me at paula@reikiflowmn.com if you have questions, or if there's things you want to hear about on the podcast, if there's a particular guest you'd like to hear from, or if you want to be a guest on the podcast, reach out. Let's do it. Let's talk. All right. I love you all so much. Peace out.